midnight.
Now this is more like it. I usually only release new videos on Thursdays, but with so much Comic-Con-y goodness going on, it was hard to resist weighing in on something while it was all happening. And that something is the new trailer for Thor Ragnarok. I remember when this film was announced that people online just seemed really indifferent to it. Something about the Thor films just always seemed to leave people a little cold. Not that either of them were all that bad. Actually, I'll stick up for the Dark World a little bit. I think it was a bit underrated. But I definitely got the sense that it wasn't anyone's favorite branch of the MCU. And you can just tell by the first two trailers, especially this latest one, that Marvel knew that was the case. Ragnarok could end up being really great or really terrible, I have no idea. But they have successfully rebranded the franchise and seem to be getting people back on board. First off, it was a pretty smart move putting Hulk in this thing. I've heard that Hulk isn't getting more solo films because Marvel is still locked into some old deal with Universal where Universal will get a share of the profits, and since the previous two attempts weren't exactly box office juggernauts, doesn't really make it worth it for Marvel to roll the dice. If that's true, it's definitely bad news for Planet Hulk fans out there, but I think this is the best consolation prize you can really hope for. Getting to see the Green One himself outside the context of an Avengers movie, where he'll always have a few great moments to shine but isn't really going to be the focus, is exciting. And giving Hulk the ability to speak and establish kind of a buddy comedy vibe with Thor is a pretty great idea. It takes the two most heightened members of the Avengers, well, okay, give or take a Vision, and humanizes them a bit. And I think that's where the Thor movies have had a tough time in the past. They're afraid to embrace the faux Shakespearean dialogue thing that the Thor of the early comics is associated with, and they've shied away from some of the weirder elements of his mythology. I mean, come on, the climax of the first Thor movie took place in a dusty desert town. Like, this is Thor. You want scale and crazy character designs. They were afraid to give us that in the past, but thankfully that doesn't seem to be the case here. To be fair to the previous Thor films, they did give us Loki, and I'm happy to see him back here. Is it just me, or is Tom Hiddleston's wig look really fake here? Like, I don't mean to nitpick, it's not a huge deal, but it just looks off. There's some weird hair stuff going on in this movie. I'm convinced that Disney did enough focus testing to determine that people liked Hemsworth more with his hair short, and that's the reason for this new hairdo. Alright, I'm getting a little bit off track. Anyway, I'm not going to weigh in on the villains or the new love interest yet. I feel like we haven't really seen enough for me to say anything substantial. Cate Blanchett definitely appears to be going very big with her performance, chewing up a lot of scenery. Which, hey, she's playing a bad guy in a Thor movie with antlers on her head, so I can't really fault her there. I hope the movie itself makes some attempt to humanize her though, because things could get really campy really quick. But in my opinion, the most important thing this trailer succeeds at is conveying a looser, funnier tone than the last two, which I think goes to show the huge impact that the success of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies has had on Marvel. They're not afraid to get weird anymore. I think you can see a lot of the Guardians' influence in this trailer. The epic cosmic scale, balanced out by the character-based humor. That was the key to making Guardians work, and that's what they're going for here, it looks like. Which is a little strange to me. I'm more familiar with the early Lee and Kirby comics and the Walt Simonson run, which didn't really have that tone. But it looks like it works well, in these trailers at least. It's giving them some allowance to get strange and really out there, which is what I felt was missing from the first two. Because, good or bad, no one should ever be able to describe a Thor movie as boring. Thor has some of the weirdest mythology to draw on, not to mention a lot of the crazy looking characters designed by Jack Kirby himself, and in my opinion, Kirby was at his peak in Thor. And whether this thing turns out well or not, one look at Jeff Goldblum tells me it's going to be hard to describe as boring, which is exactly what this series needed. Well guys, those are some quick thoughts on the trailer. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Oh, and I will be releasing another video on Thursday like I usually do. This was kind of a spur of the moment thing I just decided to do. If you enjoyed it, maybe leave a like so I'll know to do more stuff like this in the future.